Well, last week we had our first snow of the new year. Of course, we were just watching Tom's forecast and looking ahead to this weekend. That last one left thousands of people without power for days and caused damage due to fallen trees on homes and power lines. Our first guest is a certified arborist and horticulturalist who will help us get ready before the next storm. Well, give us some good advice before this next one if that's on the way.
Joining us live by Zoom this morning is Alec Selz. And he's from the Davy Tree Expert Company, and we welcome him to Virginia this morning. Alec, I am such a fan of your profession. Years ago, we had some trees that were hanging over our house, and I couldn't wait for my kids to get home so we could all stand out in the yard and watch, because you guys should charge admission to your work, because it's an amazing thing to see when you're up there in the trees. This time of year, obviously, as we just found out, can be very dangerous.
That's exactly right. You never know when a tree might come down, especially if there's problems with it you don't know about.
So, Alec, I was headed out west this past weekend. I mentioned this to you. You said you'd been out on, I think it was 60, and noticed after that last storm, so many of the trees, it looked like a lot of pines or evergreens really succumbed to the weight of the frost, that heavy snow, and they came down. When you're working with folks around their property, are they being preemptive in terms of looking at trees, or is it typically reactionary? And maybe should we be preventive in terms of looking around at some of the trees on near our houses?
Well, you definitely want to be preventive with your trees, but a lot of people simply don't know how to be or what to do about it. And that's why you call an arborist, and we can walk the property with you, look at each individual tree as needed, determine what is needed, figure out, are there problems that aren't seen very obvious just by simply walking past it. We can do a little more in-depth look at the tree to see what it is it needs.
So obviously you guys are trained and you know what to look for. The rest of us not so much. Maybe we can all look up and see a dead branch up there, but cracks are another thing. Can we look around the bottom? Because I've got a tree or two on my property where you can start to see the roots. Is that a big problem, or is that something like, oh no, that'll be fine?
Well, a lot of that has to do with the species of the tree. A lot of trees have roots right at the surface. Very normal for them to do that. Others, if you start to see roots, it could be that the tree is starting to uproot a little bit. If you see soil lifting around an area where it hasn't before, that could be the roots pulling up. If you see fungus or mushrooms forming around the base of a tree, that could be an indication of internal rot or root rot that you didn't know about.
I would imagine, Alec, you must hear this every time. The tree looked fine to me. We didn't know it was sick. And you guys are able to identify, and in maybe some cases, work with a property owner to salvage that tree or prevent further decay and damage.
That is very true. There's a lot of trees that are on the edge of, well, it looks healthy, so I think I'll leave it alone. Or, well, I'm starting to see some yellowing leaves. Maybe I should have someone look at it. It's always better to look at it when it's healthy to determine if there is anything coming down the road that might be a problem. We have to look at the overall health of it, the overall, fertilization might be needed. Most people don't think about fertilizing their trees. Doesn't seem like something you'd have to do. But trees, just like grass and other plants, need the proper nutrition, and that helps a lot, just like you or I taking vitamins to prevent getting sick, getting a cold.
Wow. Got to give my tree some vitamins. All right, so when you do come out and you take a look around, besides vitamins, is pruning or cutting basically the only thing you can do?
No, not necessarily, especially if you have a branch union that doesn't look particularly healthy, might already have some rot in it that you don't want to take off half the tree. If that limb were to come off, you can actually install cables in the tree in some cases to help support that when there's a snow or ice load on it.
And that's a really critical thing to do. I live in a neighborhood that has very mature trees, and of course you want to do your best to keep them in place. That's part of the charm. But the cabling can really help with prevention. This time of year, Alec, is there anything that we should be doing Now, if you're a homeowner thinking, okay, well, I should prune in the spring, is it okay to maybe do some light trim work to keep them away from structures or other things and just be cautious?
Or do we give them vitamins now?
Maybe that's the spring.
Yeah.
Well, yes to both. This is a great time to fertilize, to go ahead and get it in the ground before the spring flush of growth. And it's also a very healthy time to prune them while they're dormant. That way they're not pushing nutrients and water and sap into new growth, and then all of a sudden we cut it off. So the best time to prune really is during the fall and the dormant season.
All right, I'm going to ask a question that has nothing to do with anything.
Uh-oh.
In case this TV thing doesn't work out for me, how long does it take to train to get up in there and get into the top of the trees?
Well, it depends on how committed you'd like to be. We can get you up there within a week, or if you were like me, you found a job on the ground because that wasn't going to work out for you.
Yeah, I think I'll stay here.
Looking ahead, Alec, I do have a question for you. As you're considering potentially new builds or working on landscaping, that might be another area that folks would want to consider working with a talented team of arborists and horticulturalists to gain a best perspective on what will work well in an area. I think a lot of times we're planting things that maybe shouldn't have been there, or maybe were best to not have been there in the first place.
Yes, right tree, right location is a byword for us. Oftentimes, you have a landscape plan with trees that won't necessarily work in the space where it's been designated to go. So it's always good to have someone who knows what that tree is going to look like in 20 years and know what it's going to need over that time period. So yes, absolutely a good idea to consult before planting.
Good strategy.
Having the right tree in the right place. I would mention to the folks from the city who planted the trees that push up the sidewalk over on the street, maybe a different tree might have been a good idea for them. But I'm just,
They're supposed to have the beep button ready for
That's
when
right.
you say that. Alec, thank you so much for the helpful information. This is really a great time, right information. We appreciate it. And we'll share a little bit more about the services that the Davey Tree Expert Company provides. You can visit our website later today, WTVR.com/VTM.
And stay tuned. If I don't get a job with Alec, I'll be back with her in just a few minutes.